Second half, yeah, exactly. All right, 6 o'clock.
My distinct apologies for being late.
Well, you know what? You made it. You make 4, so we're good to go. So call the order. It's 6 o'clock even. In attendance, we got Tim, me, Peter, and Andy. Yeah. Everybody had a chance to eyeball the agenda.
So make a motion to approve the agenda. That's right. Is that too soon? You want me to make
Or you
it?
just go straight to the
Okay, you can do that.
consent agenda and say any objections to approving the agenda as written. Hearing no objections to approving the agenda as written. Approved. Approval of minutes. Any changes to the last meeting minutes? Once, going twice. Any objections to approval of previous minutes? Or minutes of the previous meeting, excuse me. Hearing no objections, that is approved as written. Now, being a motion.
Okay. Motion to enter the committee of the whole.
Need a second.
Second.
Perfect. Okay, any objections to entering the committee of the whole? Hearing none, we're now in the committee of the whole. Okay. All right, Peter.
So how long have you guys been waiting for?
An hour.
I'm so sorry.
Well, you're good. No worries.
We figured we could sit here for an hour, or we could start over next meeting and be a meeting behind. So thanks for showing up. We do appreciate it. And there's no sarcasm there at all.
Thank you. And what I was hoping was the documents that Tina sent out. My intent within those was to take what we had spoken about at the last meeting, trying to make it real and visualize it. And then I did go through to try to make sure that I wasn't creating conflicts with existing code or anything. So without getting into them, I think that they work well. It doesn't do anything more than we had talked about. It's refined in a few places. If you guys were to look at, if you wanted me to call out the main changes, is section 050, where it has most of the narrative to it. There were items added into that from other sections in order to simplify other sections. And then chapter 060 now is really replaced mostly with tables. And then the Excel document now has 4 tables in it. Table number 1 tells people what they are needed to do for their site perimeter landscaping. It tells them what code is required. Table number 2 really lists most of the requirements for any type of landscape. Table number 3 now has characteristic specific standards, which relate to like screening a transformer. But it's based on a dumpster or a transformer or something where it calls it out as being a unique thing that needs to have something done with it. And then table number 4 is a use-specific one that's not too much different than you saw last time, because what it's saying is when we have retail or storage that's industrial next to residential, you have to do this. Beyond that, I don't know how much you guys would like to get into anything specifically, but I think Tina, the main, so throughout the pages, if they're still in there, I have a PB where I kind of ask a question of whoever. The main things that I think relate to discussion that we have had is for types and extents of rock mulch or different mulch types. That seems to be one of the main unresolved items. Since I'm coming into this cold for being a little bit late, and people have only seen these documents pretty recently, how might I best transfer the contents of my brain or what questions people might have, or maybe even we just talk about our process. We had talked about wanting to have something ready to get into planning commission and to approvals. Other than this ad hoc summary I just gave, what's our next step?
So we were, I mean, as we sat here and didn't talk about a meeting, the hope was we could see if we can get this as far along as possible. And then
I would get you the rough draft by
We-
March 17th.
we were hoping to get the total compiled by March 17th. So all the little stuff together, and then get it out to the group to review. And then on April 6th, or the third, whatever the Monday is, meet hopefully a final time, make any tunes, approve it and get it out of here.
So
That's-
with that in mind, I guess that I would offer the edits that I'd made, and to give a bit more history to them. 2 or 3 meetings ago, we went through the different sections like 010, 020, 030, and we said where they have edits or not edits. So most of those are the same as what we had talked about. And then some of those capture edits we spoke to. So really the only sections that have significant changes to them are 050, 060. And then the addition of these tables, which would go into 060. And I'm just scanning them to see if there's anything I specifically want to bring to your attention. The rock mulch, things have been moved around. Other than that, is it fair just to put us onto the timeline that you just spoke of, where this goes into Tina's court for a draft with us, or how can I help people?
I guess I just had one thing that kind of popped to mind here. Looking at the site obscuring fence, I'm looking at the fold out table.
4. That one's
four,
4.
yeah.
Actually, I didn't print out 3, 2, and 1 for you guys.
So O-4, but 060-4. So site obscuring feature. It says 3 foot high. Oh, there we go. On the lot line. So when we say on the lot line, because most fences, if you're the one building the fence, you do it just inside the lot line so that you own the fence. I mean, how picky is somebody going to be about that word 5, 10 years from now? When it says on the lot line implies on or just inside.
Perfect semantic. On lot line means directly adjacent to, so that could be different language for this.
Yeah, or to add somewhere inside that says directly adjacent to a lot line. Because if I'm gonna pay to put up a fence, I'm gonna put it in a spot where I can control it.
And what I would say is that in this table, I accept that as a friendly modification to what I edited. So I think it makes perfect sense to say directly adjacent to lot line.
Yeah, because some places, you know, they're 6, 8 feet back. Now you got a dead area that nobody keeps track of.
Yeah.
But
And Tina, do you see any semantic issues, or is that an improvement?
Oh, no, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Clarity is my goal, so.
yeah, I mean, so if we had just an asterisk somewhere that says, you know, on lot line means directly adjacent to.
Yeah, and what I'm just doing is I'm straight up changing it to directly adjacent to lot line, because then we don't have to define it anywhere else.
Yeah, I would put it in the, yeah, like Peter said, just put it in the table.
That makes, because we were just sitting over here talking about borough codes and the attitude of the borough now seems to be if it's not written in code, then we're not gonna do it.
Yeah,
So,
specificity is better.
yeah, so let's do that. That'd be cool.
And then same question on that then is where we say inside of planting bed, that means that it's 5 feet away from the property line. because the planting bed is adjacent to the lot line.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the current code tells you that it has to be so far interior, so it's not on the front side with the landscape bed behind it. So I don't know that anybody proposed a change to where that fence can sit, but I think it's 5 right now.
Yeah, and so it's, and then specific to like drive-through business, the first line up at the top where it says it requires a 6-foot high fence, and I say inside of planting bed. And then what I've modified is the planting bed, instead of saying adjacent to lot line, I'm using the same language to call that directly adjacent to lot line. So for the fence, is that good language to say that it's inside of the planting bed? So hence it would be 5 feet away from the lot line?
I think you have to say it's 5 feet away from the lot line, because what the first code I had that was adopted in 2006 wasn't clear, and I would have people putting it on the outside, and I'd say, but that wasn't the intent. So I get where they were coming from, but it didn't specifically say where you had to put it. So then we revised it to say the
so,
plantings need to be on the street side for this particular one.
So that's a good point then. Is it better to spell it out to say on side of planting bed away from lot line? And the only reason I would do that would be to eliminate that width, just in case there is a bigger width sometime or someplace. And when maybe to use an example of that is this could happen on a side that requires another landscaping type, which might be an 8-foot bed or a 10-foot bed. Is the intent for this so the fence would always happen at the 5 feet away from the property line, or would you want it on the inside of the planting bed, no matter what width the planting bed is?
That's a great question, Peter.
well,
So you're talking along a street perimeter.
we're
Yes.
adjacent.
Yeah. Street perimeter, or where, and this is the other challenging thing of where the parking lot perimeter is, visible from the right of way. That's the other item that we kind of need to still discuss deeper. And it's just a code intent. Often I try to avoid referencing a number if it's set elsewhere. So if you just leave it as describing what it's supposed to be in of, it could be better.
Trying to think of where this would occur. Now, granted, there's lots of development that hasn't happened yet.
Well, we have the coffee stand that's gonna go in on the northeast corner of Lucille and Nelson. And then you've got those residential lots on the northern side. But that's a buffer between. So it's almost like it's dual purpose, right, Peter? One of them could be for the light shining into the right of way that's gonna be a safety hazard for oncoming traffic or traffic going down the roadway. But then you also have that visual screening between a residential lot. Well, that's all this one's talking about anyway.
Right.
Sorry, if you look in the intent. So it's probably not even gonna be along a right of way. It's gonna be between 2 interior lot lines.
So
Yes, across an alley. Yes, abutting or located across an alley. Yes.
I thought the group landed on all the landscaping would be interior and the fence or berm or wall or whatever would be on basically adjacent to the lot line.
I don't know if we, I can't remember if we talked about that specific to the buffer table. I know we talked about it for the landscape types. And either way.
Across the right of way, I can totally see that having landscaping on both sides. So
right.
look at that to me, that's okay. Otherwise, I'm a huge fan if it's on an alley. I'm a huge fan of that fence going as far outside as possible. But across from right of way, we really can probably walk around the entire fence. All it is a visual barrier.
And And a bigger question on this is, and I don't know if the red text printed out or not for you guys, is that on the screen, if you can see me sharing it, on the right-hand side,
Here, oh,
any of the ones that have the red text might actually be redundant to our bigger table, because what we say is, so if a drive-through business has to happen on commercial or industrial land, automatically, if they are adjacent to or across from a residential zoning district, they have to put up a fence. So this actually might be, most of these might be redundant.
Can a drive-through business that happen, and can coffee shop happen in rural residential?
only if they're on like a minor collector, major collector type roadway.
Okay, so it still could, they could in theory be across from.
Yeah, and then to go back, so then back to table 1. So, and this is a question for you, Tina, is rural residential, I think, is only listed once someplace where it lists RR. For the use of the proposed development, should we add rural residential in this?
Well, rural residential is a zoning district. It's not a use type.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, rural residential is such a catch-all. It's
Okay.
commercial, daycare, duplex, single family.
Okay, perfect. Because
It's
then
kind
if
of a
you're
hybrid.
if you're doing a coffee shop or a drive-through bank or a fast food restaurant, you'd be considered to be commercial, and then you need to do L3 adjacent to residential, and that requires a fence automatically.
Correct.
So I think that, and Tina, again, I think I might defer this to you to verify, but I think that any of these lines that have the red text are redundant and not necessary, except if you are requiring, they will all have a fence because of their use. They may not have landscape.
Yeah, I'll definitely look those over.
Okay.
And incorporate notes into the March 17th draft. So
And
you
then
guys-
and related to that redundancy, parking garages aren't redundant because it really talks about the design of the feature or an adjacent feature. And then with a pet or a child daycare facility, I'm assuming those would be considered to be commercial uses.
Yes.
So the only difference to them is that by the buffer code, it says fencing directly adjacent to all lot lines. That was a unique one because it wasn't just the adjacent lot line. It said all.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I would say the intent was meaning, yeah, all lot lines, but not along the right of way. So that should be cleaned up. Meaning you could be the third one in a row on Nelson, and there's lots behind you, lots to the left of you, lots to the right of you. So on the 3 sides where you touch a lot, you have to have that buffering, but not along the road. It was intended to deal with the 3 lots that you touch.
Okay, perfect.
But this is also the use is an outdoor area associated with pet or child.
Mhm.
So wouldn't you want them to have, I mean, I'm assuming this is for safety as well as screening. So in that case, if we're just talking about the outdoor
Yes or
area,
no? Safety is not necessary. Well, safety of the child is not our job. Safety is.
And Tina, the intent for this, so let's say there was an outdoor play yard that had play equipment, et cetera, in it, is the intent that it basically has a 6-foot fence around it? So it could just be a small portion of the site, or is the intent to screen along the lot line?
That's a great question, because this is that one of the things that you have in this chart are the ones that were not talked about a lot during the 2017 rewrite. So I can't tell you
Okay.
this far in what that was and if they even talked about it and
Because
how it
then-
would act.
And maybe the
What?
parallel for this is a pet or a child outdoor use area is more like a dumpster, where you want to provide an enclosure to it rather than trying to screen the site. Not to compare children to dumpsters.
Sometimes they're smelly.
my kids eat just about everything.
And then, so with that in mind, Tina, this one might move into the characteristic based. If it is intended that this, if they provide an outdoor children's area, no matter where it is, there has to be a fence around it, but the fence doesn't have to happen on the lot line, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, because, I mean, not all of our daycares use the entire open, undeveloped area as their play area. Sometimes it's a small area. So I think the intent was just to screen that play area.
Cause I'm just thinking if the one that I know that's in the city for sure is Denali. And
Yeah, CCS up there.
yeah, that's another one.
And yeah, that's the Bright Minds, right? And then we have the one out at Jacobson Lake. Lamont
Oh, yeah.
Circle, there's
Yeah,
one out
that's
there.
inside the city. Okay. So, but I mean, and even Denali, they got a hill on the backside.
Mhm.
So what's the point there? You just, and then they're street on one side. And the fish hook on another.
I don't think that, do they even have an outside play area?
They do in the summer.
Oh, when they do that temporary camp
and
type
they-
stuff,
and they
yeah.
fence it off. And I think their childcare code requires a fence anyway. So. Do we even need
So
to
are you
find out?
talking about a fence, or are you talking about screening the play area, for lack of a better term? To be honest with you, I almost think like that's you're putting kids in jail.
And that may be why it was written from the lot line, so it didn't get so small, but the point was, let's see, I'm trying to look and see, so daycares, adjacent.
And
As long as you're on the, you mentioned prisons, outdoor areas associated with prisons wouldn't be a bad idea to have screen as well.
They are, almost all them have a wall. So here's a quick one.
And I think
So
it's more
they're
intended,
all commercial through there,
right, so it doesn't apply.
right?
Jacobson Lake is too.
But if you're commercial or you're up against RR, so RR, you can have a daycare, which we're gonna say, oh, you have to be screened.
Mhm.
Then you got a freaking mechanic next door.
Mhm.
They can spread out and do whatever they want.
The thing is, the daycares can encroach into your neighborhoods sometimes. They sometimes encroach. And so if you're that residential lot
Right.
abutting it,
But
that's
if
what
you're-
it was intended to screen, was the residential lot.
But are you RR or are you R? Or one?
Well, again, the screening and buffering is not set up based on zoning, it's based on the use. So you could be commercial in RR next to residential in RR.
Right.
And you have to screen because it's based on use.
so,
But yeah, you're right. You could end up having, if you had a mechanic shop, just commercial use, right next to
Daycare.
daycare, which is commercial use. The daycare would be required to have fence, but
And
yeah,
it's not.
is that right?
Is there a certain size, as long as we're talking about daycare, is there a certain size, number of kids that are in the daycare that triggers certain requirements? Because under the building codes, there is a, in some of the state amendments, there is a distinction between someone who is running a full-term daycare center with classrooms and kitchens and everything, and someone who has 6 or less kids that they're taking care of in their home, and they're allowed to do that.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think that's 5.
is it what?
I think it's 5, that family daycare.
Yeah, it's something like that, 5 or 6. So that's what I'm curious about, is if somebody is just doing daycare in their home for 4 kids, as opposed to somebody who's running a school, basically, is there a distinction between those uses?
Yeah, so the definition of the code does not even call you a daycare facility until you have more than 5 children or adults.
Okay.
And that's when the state gets involved.
Right.
With their certifications,
Right.
trust me. Or their roof.
Mhm.
So then, specific to this, then question is, in order not to associate children with pets, I'd probably recommend breaking the two out. So if we have an outdoor area associated with a pet facility, it's probably fair to say that outdoor areas for pets must be located within a 6-foot-high sight-obscuring enclosure with sight-obscuring gates. That sounds fair, and that's also to stop dogs from escaping. Playing off what Andy said from a jail for children, the safety aspect or trying to mitigate the visual aspect would be outdoor areas for child daycare centers must be located within a 4-foot minimum high sight obscuring enclosure.
That's
And then
Mhm.
some facilities might want to do taller anyways, because if they're worried about, I don't know, strangers or whatever, I don't know.
I don't understand why we would do side obscuring.
The only time side obscuring was intended to be in here, I'm not gonna say the language says it, but was again, if there's a residential lot with a residential use on, I have a single family home and next to me is a daycare that can have 25 kids in it. I want a privacy wall, fence, something screening your yard from my yard. And yeah, it won't take care of everything, but at least I don't have to see them even though I hear them.
So then what I would just modify is that outdoor areas associated with child daycare centers adjacent to residential use.
Yeah, that's what we should just
Okay.
clean that up, because yeah, we don't care about
That makes
commercial.
more sense to me now.
And
Yep.
then stating a minimum of 4 feet would obscure most of the disarray, as you will. Or to meet that intent, Tina, is it better if it is 6-foot height?
I would say 6 foot, just from
Okay.
standpoint of, I mean, it's a combination of safety and visual, but it's kind of like, I'm hesitant to say at this point because it's been pointed out numerous times, we have topography.
Yes, we do.
So you could be on the house above the daycare and you, doesn't matter how tall the fence is, there's no way you can screen it.
Okay, roger that.
So I'm not sure how to recommend on that one.
Well, I think 6 feet's appropriate. And minimum 6 feet, so they can go higher if they want. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I think for typical, most zoning that I've ever encountered is designed for perfectly flat land. It's not designed for any kind of topography. So I think we need to, I think 6 foot minimum is good. People can go higher if they want, especially if they're trying to protect the kids from people seeing into the play yard. But
and then do we want to be to give so we say 6-foot height sight obscuring enclosure for those for the lengths of the perimeter visible from adjacent residential properties, or is it just the whole thing should be enclosed?
I think it should be the perimeter adjacent to residential properties.
Okay.
For residential uses, whatever.
Yep, that's more appropriate.
While you're on the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Just to double check the intent there, it's only the outdoor play areas, so gotta try, if you go out to daycare, no one's gonna have like a 10 by 10 area for the kids to play, that's all they'd have to fence. All right,
Only
That is-
adjacent residential.
And then again, so what this says in Tina, this gets back to like visibility from right of way or otherwise. So within a minimum 6-foot high sight obscuring enclosure for the length of the perimeter sides visible from adjacent residential uses. So this would include angled views. It's not perimeter edges parallel to the property line. It's basically what's visible from the property line. Is that fair?
So I was actually trying to think of how to make it. Yeah, I'm with you. I want to get the visible from the right of way, that kind of stuff. And it's like, if the play yard's in the rear yard, can you say, I mean, can it be run from the standpoint of just the lot lines abutting where the play area is? Cause I mean, if it's a house that's been converted to a daycare, the front yard is the parking and the driveway and that kind of stuff. Why do they need to screen the front part? It's the backyard where the play area is. So how do you draft that? And I can play with that, but I mean, if I have some clear direction that you're just trying to screen the play area from the portion of the adjoining lot that.
The way to look at it, Tina, is you're trying to screen the residential area from the play areas.
Right.
So if we have 2 lots, I'll just draw this up quick. If we have 2 lots, like this, if we have a house on the right-hand side that is here.
We can't see your drawing.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'll have to share my
Different
screen.
Yeah.
That is good information. Okay, let me know you can see it.
Yep.
Yep.
Got it.
So if we have 2 properties where on the right-hand side there's a house here, and let's say someone is converting a residential facility to do this, and they have their house here, and then they put their child jail out here. What it would mean would be is that they would need to screen. They would need to provide a site obscuring screen, and I'll make this more visible for you. Sorry. Probably about that far.
Mhm.
Because in theory, that house would have a view that goes like that.
Right.
And then let's say it's just parkland behind them. But if there was another residential lot behind them with a house here, then in theory, the blah, 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 tools.
You put a fence along.
In theory, you would have a
along
fence
that
here and here.
Yep. I don't know so much about there, but just at least.
Along the back.
It's like laying out sight lines in a bathroom.
Yep.
Figure out how far out a partition has to go to screen, give you some privacy from a door. And
Yep.
It's kind of what same way you'd have to do an analysis on that.
And then if they had another house on their west, then that gets them to the point where they need it to be fully enclosed, because they have that visibility on all sides.
Well, Peter, what you could, or I mean, there's a number of different options. You could run the common lot line between the 2 residences. You could run a screening fence.
Yes.
Halfway down that and eliminate that one that's on your right side of that play yard.
Yep. So
I
yeah,
mean, there's different options, but the point is you'd have to do a sightline study to kind of decide where you need to put those screening fences in.
yeah, they could choose to do a larger enclosure if they want.
Yeah.
But this describes the minimum.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that then outdoor areas for child daycare centers must be located within a minimum 6-foot-high site obscuring enclosure for the length of the perimeter sides visible from adjacent residential uses.
Boom.
And I think I just got a blip on my side. Okay.
It seems to me that the language requires a fence at the property line. Whether or not that's where the enclosure's at.
Outdoor areas and that's what's interesting in this is that I think that we have 2 different semantics. So within the definitions, I added a definition for site obscuring. And then site obscuring feature relates to fences, berms, or walls for other uses.
Right.
With refuse containers, site obscuring enclosure. I think that we haven't provided a definition for that yet. So site obscuring enclosure might state that it's specific to a particular object or type of use. So outdoor areas for child daycare centers must be located within a minimum 6-foot-high site obscuring enclosure for the length of the perimeter sides, visible from adjacent of the enclosures.
Okay. There we go. Okay, that cleared it up.
A 6-foot high sight obscuring enclosure for the sides of the enclosure visible from residential uses. I think that's clearer because the perimeter made it feel like it would be the outside of the site.
That's right. Yeah.
And close it wherever
I
you
like
want, as long as it's on
Yeah.
the outside. Makes more sense.
And then that's probably good language to copy back up for pet areas too. And Tina, other than equating pets and kids, are there any other differences between pet facilities and daycare? So I'm assuming areas associated with pets facilities, would that be for any site, correct? Not just adjacent to residential?
Right. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. It may be a moot point. I mean, one, we don't have a lot of dog grooming facilities in the city. And there's talk of banning kennels in the city, so that's gonna take that off the table. The thing that I've heard from people is with dog grooming, if you had, or a doggy daycare, you can have a commercial use office, whatever, on the adjacent lot, and it has windows, and here we open windows in the summertime, and then you get all these barking dogs. But I don't know that you could really screen that noise. I mean, visually you could screen it so that you're not looking at it, but I mean, if it was kept up neat, does it really look that bad anyway? You're probably not going to have it in a residential neighborhood just because of you have daycares in a neighborhood because they often serve the people who live in the neighborhood. So that's a need. A doggy daycare is more of a luxury, and put them out in the commercial uses next to commercial use, and maybe there doesn't need to be the screening.
There's a doggy daycare down the road from my house, and never really hear them.
A lot of them are indoors nowadays. They don't bother with the outside because
Odds are running too high.
But I know you separated out kids and pet facilities, but a lot of people, I won't say most people, treat their pets as their kid.
Oh, yeah.
or better.
That is fair.
Sometimes better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you just chain the two together and turn them loose.
Yeah, see who survives that needs tuition for university. Could be the dog, could be the kid.
Yeah, 50-50 sometimes.
So then just to reiterate in these tables, since I have them up on the screen now, the only change since once you saw before was that I downgraded between industrial and commercial to be L2. Because that seemed to be closer in keeping for separating those two uses. So L3 really separates residential from commercial and industrial. And then between industrial back to commercial is L2. But commercial, because we're always looking to the harsher uses. So if you're developing commercial next to industrial, you don't have to put any screening in. But if you're doing industrial next to commercial, you do have to put screening in.
So make sure you get there first.
Exactly. And then for the table for the quantification of things, I don't think that I made any significant changes in here. There are a couple of notes, especially where underneath L1 and L2 and L3, I just describe where they happen. Those would be taken out. And then we were just looking at this for pet center for the characteristic specific uses. Anything in red is just me making things up. Tina was going to look at these to see if they're consistent with her interpretation of the code, because these ones are typically providing a quantification, whereas before it was based on Tina's guidance.
Peter, could you go back to that previous table? I got a kind of a nitpicky question, but that's how I am. the one about the parking interior parking landscaping.
Yep.
The minimum area of parking, the second item over bed width and location.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking at here. Yeah. You know, I saw something on the McDonald's site plan that kind of intrigued me, and that's the fact that they sloped their end of their run so that if you're pushing snow out of the way, you can just turn it as a triangle. And let me show you this little sketch here. I can share my screen.
You should be able to.
Grab control.
And while Andy's bringing that up, the dimensions in here would make it a minimum space of 180 square feet.
Yep.
But we show 150 because there will be turning radii taken off them.
So can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be, you have a minimum dimension of 10 feet in there. This I was intrigued by this whole idea of being able to come through here and just turn your truck and push the snow out into the yard. And granted, you're going to lose a couple of spaces there doing this, but this is actually, this guy. That triangle right there is 200 and almost 300 square feet, 295. So I'm just wondering if we can somehow change the wording of that to something other than a 10-foot minimum width, because this would give you your required area that you need for landscaping. It would also give you the opportunity just to kind of ease up on snow plowing problems when people are hitting these squares straight on edges. So I don't know if there's any way to.
So I would say that could cleverly fall into the turning radii.
Or
so with the minimum planting width of 10 feet, except those parts of landscape areas created by turning radii or angles of parking spaces.
I'm just planning an idea in Tina's head, actually. Here's 15 spaces right here. Here's 15 spaces over on this side. So every 15 feet, we're required to have it broken up, or every 15 spaces, we're required to have it broken up by this island. So anyway, that's the only thing that was kind of brought to my attention was sometimes you're putting too much restrictions on the description of these islands. So anyway,
well, I think that might be compatible with our wording, Andy.
I'm almost thinking that if you just specify the area, and maybe Tina, you can chime in on this. This is more than 150 square feet, which is what one of these space, or that space is 200 square feet right there, 10 by 20. So
the minimum dimensions are based on tree viability.
Okay.
If the goal is to have a wide space for tree roots, even down to 5 feet, a linear 5-foot planting bed with a mature tree, when we get our windstorms, it just pulls them right out.
Okay, so you would have to have at least an area, there's 10 feet right there, to plant a tree and make it viable.
Well, but with your triangle, I think that your triangle is creative thinking. It gives you the square footage. If they plant a tree in the center, they achieve the intent of this.
Yeah.
So my question is, by us saying except those parts of landscape areas created by turning radii or angles of parking spaces, that probably gives Tina some leeway that for an idea like this to give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Or just that, didn't we have we haven't written it yet, I suppose, but the administrative variance or whatever you call it.
Alternative approval or whatever.
Alternative, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like calling it out specific because I'm gonna get beat up by an interpretation by somebody if I call that a turning radius, because they're gonna say, that's not a turning radius for a car, that's.
Okay, yeah. That's rectangle I just drew right there. That's 141 square feet. So you're almost meeting the minimum area required.
Yes.
By putting a tree planting zone within that triangle that's 150 square feet. And if you just kind of drug these guys out a little bit like this, with a minimum dimension down here, 10 feet, then you kind of met that intent too.
And and it depends what's adjacent to it as well for the root depth, and it also has a minimum length of 18. I see what you're talking about, Andy.
Well, it's actually a
Just a thought,
minimum
I
length
saw
of
that, and
20.
as soon as I see 10 feet minimum, and I'm thinking of parking lots, to me, that's putting in a square rather than some other shape.
So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a great idea to, whether it's an alternative or, that it's called out as an alternative or it's just redefined. It may be easier to call it out as an alternative with a picture,
Mm-hmm,
to show what you're talking about.
mm-hmm.
And Andy, for in my experience, you're the first person ever to draw this in 25 years. So
Yeah, me too.
This is a new idea. If only you could market this and patent it.
Yeah, there you go.
Funny.
Tim's over here. He's drawing fast and furious.
Oh yeah, stop sharing so I can't copy it down fast.
Tell
No,
them,
no,
tell
I'm just
them
kidding.
for public record.
That's true.
Send me the royalties, that's all I care about. That was the only thing I had on that. This question.
Yeah, I'd probably do it like Tim said. Just do it as the alternative or
Yeah.
whatever that word is.
Yeah.
And that way you leave in the language for everybody who's doing it the standard old school way. You get that 10-foot width and you don't have to deal with that issue. But yet it gives that door open for that creative design for somebody who's like Andy that's thinking outside the box.
Well, that'd be hell of a lot.
And Tina, if that sounds like a good thing, I can get you the wording from Anchorage Code for that, because that would, an idea like Andy just brought up or anything else, that does give an option to have someone come up with a creative idea.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Then another thing maybe to call out was I've tried to quantify landscape boulders and fencing. Tina's recollection was that from our previous meeting, we might not have just said get rid of the ornamental fencing.
That's
So
where
the
I'm
note,
coming
You ditched the ornamental fencing is what I thought.
well, so the note that I have in here is provide landscape boulders within planting beds. Provide one boulder per 10 linear feet of lot line. Boulders may be grouped. And then in the definitions or the application, there's a bit more information on boulders. This basically creates a quantity that's pretty similar to what we've typically done on projects. Rather than getting rid of fencing, what we might consider doing is to allow people to reduce the number of boulders they use if they provide a decorative fence. So figure out a way to program in that people have to do something that's a little bit more special. I haven't thought through that fully yet, but the boulders lock in an additional aesthetic that then maybe we could allow people to trade.
Totally not a fan of fences, so just if it's an aesthetic.
Well, if you think of the
I think they-
downtown lot, have you seen it in the summertime? Not that
Which
it was
one?
the greatest. This downtown
Oh,
parking lot.
where the fire station used to be.
Yeah, it has
Yeah.
it's not wrought iron, but it looks sort of like a wrought iron fence. And then it has just like a 3 or 4 foot planting bed on the exterior of it with some flowers and shrubs in there.
And the plows haven't gotten that one yet.
I'm not sure. The hill looked pretty big the other day, so I'm not. I think
That's
they're
my
leaving it in
problem
the
with
spaces.
almost all these fences, they all get trashed by plows.
Yeah. But it would be a choice. I think that's the way Peter has
Oh,
it
yeah.
written. Is
That's why I've got rocks, is because plows don't beat rocks.
right.
You hit that boulder, you're done.
But if you didn't want boulders, you could do it
Oh,
decorative fence.
okay.
I think that's where you're going for, right, Peter? Was just
Yeah,
good-
and what I'm trying to figure out for language is saying as an aesthetic options, boulders may be substituted for up to 50% of their quantity with ornamental fencing less than 48 inches in height. And one of the
What?
challenges is when you're creating options like this is finding something fairly equivalent, that someone just can't, that fencing just isn't cheaper, so they go with a cheaper fencing. So this is something for consideration, I think.
Well, I know in a downtown, you put a fence around a parking lot because it controls the access points where a pedestrian gets into the street.
Yep. Yeah, some people
Now-
might actually want to do it.
But why do we require it? Is it really any value?
Yeah, so this isn't a requirement. It's giving someone an option where they can reduce the number of boulders that they use.
But I didn't realize boulders were required.
They are.
So right, it's either boulders or
Okay.
fencing, right? Or-
Well, that's the way it's written, but right now it's trees, shrubs, flowers, boulders, fencing, and mulch. All of them.
So you don't necessarily have to have.
You're supposed to have the interpretation has been you're supposed to have all of them in the right quantity, and it's just kind of evolved that basically we put fencing for about 40% of the property line is what it's evolved into.
Yeah, and with the when you're not in the urban core, I don't know that the fencing, other than, again, just a decorative standpoint. I mean, it makes sense. You think of Tacos Cancun, they've fenced off. Well, it's not their parking lot, their patio. They did that. I'm trying to think of who else might want to do it.
Who were they just looking at?
I mean, some people like the look of it in a landscape bed instead of
Sure.
just some plantings.
That's their own.
Right.
Understanding.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It's been in since '06. Someone had a vision for it, but I think it's just what they were going for.
I think the city had a parking lot surrounded by, it was like 6x6 posts with a metal, kind of wrought iron fence between. Sort of. I thought it was you guys. It was not.
Hmm.
Can't remember. I don't know. It looked better than a split rail, but then, or stoutered than a split rail, and didn't look horrible as far as aesthetics go. So I mean, there's lots of different choices other than split rail. I just think
Everybody chose split rail because it was the cheapest.
it's cheap, yeah.
Yeah,
I just.
but it's not cheap over the long run because you're having to replace those boards
Well,
out.
but what happens is they tip over and then open.
Yeah, so maybe it doesn't matter so much, but like this way, you can do all boulders and no fence. But you can cut down on your boulders if you want a fence.
And the reason that I do like that is, so within the city of Wasilla boundary, rather than just we're always trying to avoid the monotony of just a single tree every 30 feet with a shrub. So the boulders do add something a little bit more aesthetic, unique that is required in Wasilla. And then allowing them to substitute up to a certain amount of them gives an extra variety depending on what people want to achieve. Some owners might would prefer a fence rather than boulders.
Right. Define boulder.
It's defined.
Is it? Where?
In section 050, I think that what I said was boulders shall be an even mix of 6 foot, 9 foot, and 12 foot circumference, and 12, 18, and 12, 16, and 20 inches height above grade. So yes, I provided a bit of definition.
16, 20.
I
So
didn't go to the effort of.
circumference. Okay, that's about 6 foot circumference. Yeah.
Yeah, and typically a boulder that has a 12-foot circumference is about 4 feet across, roughly.
You have 1 per 10-foot of lot line.
That actually averages out to what we've been showing. And Tim, what might be a good idea for you guys, because you generate plans too, is even to kind of look at any approved plans you have to see what you guys did, just to see if these assessments we did off ours match your experience.
Okay.
And obviously, any of this is a place to start.
Yeah, it's really tough to change the words on the page to the concept to the reality.
What, and this is for what criteria this is under? What location? It's perimeter?
This is for perimeter, so this is always between any project and the road. And then it also does apply to parking lot perimeter. And the reason for that is parking lot perimeter and site perimeter are the same because they typically happen between it and the road. So I duplicated that text down here rather than referencing its L1 plus stuff.
Yeah. I remember landscape boulders being relatively expensive when I did it, when I was doing that stuff. And that was a long time ago.
Yep. And typically what we see is the 6 foot, 9 foot, and 12 foot are about $200, $300, and $400 roughly. Give or take 50.
That hasn't changed much then. That's interesting.
Yeah, just wait until now that I've said that they'll like jump up to 1,000 and 2,000.
I'll buy up all the rocks in the city. Around the city.
Yeah. You buy all our rocks.
Clearly, they're
And-
not good return on investment.
And that might be it might be a good context for us as well. Is my feeling for this review is this is pretty. It's not a rewrite; it's a reorganization, and we're adding more quantification, and we're deleting some things that we've heard information about for expense. So the biggest change was last year when it went from 16 perennials to 9. That probably saved about 20% of project cost. By us removing the perennials, we're going to save about 40%, maybe 50% of project cost. By removing the fencing, that's probably another 5%. So we're at the point where I don't necessarily want to go too much further because we start to strip it out.
Yep.
So this is going to provide a huge benefit to people where they'll be happy. And then Tina, I'm assuming that no matter what we do, there are going to be a little bit of growing pains or things we're going to learn where there's an error. So it's
Right.
likely that in another year there'll be another amendment to fix some small things. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's definitely the option, and I would say, maybe you guys even want to say that you suggest that it be reviewed again in a year or 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Or just to see if any
good.
unintended consequences that were
That's
packaged in there.
Fair.
I appreciate bringing up all the other stuff we've taken out because I wasn't thinking about that in conjunction with the rest of it. So I was more looking at it just, 1 per 10 linear feet, and if I gotta pay, so basically you're looking at
Yeah, but you feel
$250 to
perennials.
$400 per linear foot, or per 10 feet, so 30 to 40
Yep.
bucks a linear foot for your site, but we've taken out all that other stuff, so yeah.
And
The
Tim, I
heights
think,
were shorter too.
and that's a really good thing for you to check is just ground truth that, and all that we did was we looked at perimeter property lines, counted the number of boulders and divided by the length.
So you're talking about, project cost reductions. And that's part of our story. When we drop this with the planning commission, city council, and not that I want to get in your business too much, but does it make your job easier to the point where your fee goes down? That would be part of the story as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, especially if there's revisions, because yes, so the perennials is a huge thing for, relatively speaking, for our time. If there were any changes, it was kind of a pain in the butt to deal with. Yes, fees will go down, and I think that because of the quantification that we're putting in, it'll eliminate some unknowns or interpretation on Tina's part. So this is going to streamline things because we'll probably get fewer comments for revisions.
So it streamlines your line of work as well.
Yes. And Tina, I think that's also a good question for you is, do you feel that these revisions are going to make your review process easier because people are coming in meeting code?
At this point, I'll say whatever it takes, within whatever code changes need to be done, because there's some kind of disconnect between what it says today and what comes through the door. So
Yep.
whether it's language or format or disorganization or whatever, so anything that makes that easier, because that's been my frustration, and I know it's the applicant's frustration too, is they think they've designed it to meet all the codes, and then when I go section by section, it's like, nope, didn't meet that, yep, met that, nope, didn't meet that, yep, met that, and then you do that back and forth.
So they
So
can
I'd
get
love for one review to come through and hit all the marks, and if this
their
will,
checklist.
yep, right.
Which by simplifying it and putting all this stuff in tables and more
Theoretically, it should make it easier.
more organized. Yeah.
Because that's part of our story as to what we've accomplished here is
Yeah.
made your job easier, made her job easier, made it easier for the average Joe, made it cheaper and it really didn't cost the aesthetic much, if anything. And if anything, it improves the aesthetic through the town because then people are more willing to bring their stuff up to code. Like my neighbors on either side,
Mhm.
they don't want to touch it because they don't want to do anything because they're looking at it going, I can't afford it. It's not worth it. But if it's cheaper, then they're going to raise their bar. So in mind. So that's part of our story. Cool. Thanks, Peter. That was awesome. Okay, anything else we really should hit? I mean,
I've got just a couple of comments,
let's go, Andy.
suggestions. I've got mine marked up here, but I can tell you which file I'm looking at.
Real quick, Peter, rather than saying 1 per 10 linear feet on those boulders and then say boulders may be grouped, should we say like 5 per 50 feet? Boulders may be grouped, so that way you are not having somebody come in with 1,000 feet of lot frontage and putting 100 boulders all together in one corner.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I think
Bye,
that that's what would happen. That's a good point. Provide just trying to do some quick math. If we're using our basis of 30 feet, I would probably say, like you just say, is 1 boulder per 10. I would say 6 per 60.
Sure. And
Just something that implies groupings, but not a rock pile at one end.
yeah,
That's always the hard part, is how to get
That's
them. It was the same with the flowers, it's like
Yeah.
everybody wanted to put 10,000
Spot.
perennials right at the corner and nothing the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, one, they won't all fit there, and two, that's not the point.
It's easier to mow.
although I may have just.
It's just,
To make it work.
Well, now we say 1 tree and 6 shrubs per 30 linear feet, but we do have some flexibility in that, right? You don't have to have exactly
Mhm.
the tree every 30 feet.
yeah, tree shrub, tree shrub, tree shrub.
I don't know. Maybe more thinking it. We
Well,
also need to get to Andy's comments too.
you got Andy?
In 1633.020 applicability, I'm thinking it'd be nice to have something at the very beginning of this section of the code that lists kind of a checklist of the requirements. And what comes to mind as an example for me is the requirement for a bond, because that always catches our clients off guard. And if we had something in the beginning of this thing that kind of had a checklist of the steps you have to go through, you need a survey, you need a landscape plan, you need a bond, you need an as-built survey. So there's basically 2 surveys that are required as well. And so I'm just thinking, and I don't know if Tina, I'd be happy to try to go through this and come up with what I see as a checklist of stuff that's required. But just something up front, so when people are looking first into this code, the layperson can look at it and see, well, oh yeah, I need to get a surveyor to do this for me. I need to talk to the bank for that. I need to do, track this stuff down.
You probably
So-
want to put it under 1633.040, because that's where it talks about the landscape plan and the submittal and the plan components. And there is a checklist for that landscape plan, similar to what the site plan checklist.
Yeah,
And that's what I was just bookmarking would be, and where it goes is that we have a submittal which says what's appropriate, then the plan components. So maybe before those or after them is just have something that says process and just
Yeah.
explains the landscape plan approval.
and I would, it's something that goes to the different levels, if it's just an administrative review, if it needs to go
Okay.
before the commission, something like that, but, it'd be, I don't know that people realize when if they want to go get a conditional use permit, or even I think there's another version there too, where you got to do a mail out, you got to wait for a time for people to respond and that kind of stuff, and that affects their schedule. So, in just and I'm thinking more in terms of, to be honest with you, of us talking to our clients and saying, well, this is what you're going to have to do when you're, to comply with the Title 16. So, somewhere in there, just a kind of a checklist on process of the different levels of approvals. Would be nice
And
to have.
for the sake of sharing nerdiness, what I'm working on right now with Brad, Andy is kind of like that.
Mhm.
So I think this would help us out. I talked about this needs to be distilled into a pamphlet, but Tina, this is a sneak peek of what we were kind of hoping to do that you could have up front with a pamphlet is who needs it, the types of landscaping, general requirements. It's like the dummy's guide to what you have to do.
I mean, started.
Nice. Yeah, we're trying to do that for everything, which I think, if I'm understanding Andy correct, we're trying to work on a development guide, and it would say, do I need a permit? If so, what kind? And then what's the process? What are those submittal requirements for each one? And a landscape plan would be a part of it if you met a certain threshold, and otherwise it wouldn't be, or a type.
Awesome.
We need to be careful, and though, if we have that list of stuff that goes with the landscaping plan, that we only talk about stuff that is required for just landscaping plan.
Right.
Because there's like the as-built, I mean, there's some as-built requirements in the landscaping, but there's also most of the permit applications require those things.
Mhm.
So I don't want to get them crossed up.
Yep.
Okay.
Thoroughly.
As long as you're on that page, Peter, that was my next comment. Go up where it talks about who can do a landscaping plan. I think we should get rid of a professional with similar landscaping expertise as approved by the city planner. Because there's state law now that says who can be a landscape architect and who, there's a threshold, I think, Peter, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a threshold of whether you can do landscape design or not, and if you have to be licensed or not. And I think some of that might conflict with that.
That kind of has an interesting, my understanding typically is entities will ask for one prepared and sealed by a licensed landscape architect in order to ensure that there's a higher level of expertise or professionalism applied to it because it saves them time. When we first got licensure up here, it was still allowed for architects and other professionals if they had the previous experience. So this is kind of consistent with what we said after licensure.
So
Tina,
I asked Tina that question when I first ran across that one.
Yep.
And she said, well, if you have a degree from an accredited landscape school and you have so many years of experience, and there's a couple of other requirements that basically she described the licensing requirements for a landscape architect, and she said what they would look at for the required expertise to be approved by the city planner. So that's two things. And then I understand, in fact, that the licensure for landscape architects happened while I was down in the States. So I didn't even, other than the fact that the landscape architects were trying to get licensed before I left, it happened after I left. And one of my partners at Architects Alaska still insists that architects can still do landscape architecture, but I'm not so sure anymore because I can't find the only thing I can find in the landscape regulations that says you don't have to be a landscape architect is if what you're doing does not affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
Yeah.
And then there's a definition in there that anything landscape art, anything you touch affects the health, safety, and welfare of the public. I mean, I was even wondering if you need to be licensed to plant a lawn and a few trees, for on your projects.
Well,
Yeah.
and what the parity for this would be if you were to follow what it was previously, it would state in the state of Alaska or an engineer, architect, or surveyor
Mhm.
with similar landscaping experience. So it doesn't, because otherwise it gets confusing if someone has to determine whether someone is an equivalent of a landscape architect.
And I'm not saying
goes
I'm
for
the equivalent
any-
of a landscape architect, but I've done landscape plans before.
Yeah,
So-
same here, Andy. I did get called out on it. It was by the borough. And it's because, but I wasn't doing anything but meeting the permit requirement. Like,
Yep.
I'm not doing it based on life, safety, all that stuff. That's what's required by the permit, so that's what I put on the plan.
Yeah.
To me, that, and it goes to any engineering discipline. You can go outside of your
scope.
You can go outside your license for minor minor work outside of the license. I've yet to see what anybody has defined though as minor.
Typically we don't, but yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And what has happened is when licensure first came in, there were other design professionals that had that as a part of their area of practice.
Mhm.
That's not true 20 years later. So if you do, so I just put this as an example up here. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but you could say, or a professional engineer, architect, civil engineer, or land surveyor with similar expertise with the preparation of landscape plans.
Mhm.
But the issue is those people don't really exist anymore because landscape architects have been preparing them for the past 20 years.
And that's why I bring it up, Peter. I think it puts undue pressure on the city planner to have to either defend that or make that decision. And that's why everywhere else, the city of Anchorage just says landscape architect, period. I don't think they have an exception for somebody else who's similarly qualified and stuff.
That's what they did change in order to remove the waffly room in between.
Yep.
When this was amended in 17, the previous code didn't require a landscape architect no matter what size the project was.
Yep.
It didn't have a requirement. Then there was a request to add a landscape requirement. So it was for things that are over 5,000 square feet, larger scale developments. At the time it said or 1 acre. That's since been taken away. And the planning commission wanted to have the option. I'm not sure if they were lobbied or if this was what they came up with on their own, but they wanted to have something in there that if you could show that you've done landscape plans over, time, you could be allowed to do that. But I'm not going to say there was any kind of in-depth look at the licensing requirements for landscape architects.
Well, and Tina, the state board still has that discretion to decide if what you're doing outside of your registration is minor. But I have not seen any examples of what they consider minor. So that's why I'm just trying to. I mean, it protects both ways. It protects somebody coming in. I mean, I still see plans from builders who should not be drawing architectural plans, and then trying to sell them to their clients and stuff. And I mean, real architecture, not just a house. So what I'm getting at is Peter's right. That's what they wrote into they tried to write into the ordinance 20 years ago. But to be honest with you, everywhere I look now, there's not an option. It's a landscape architect where it's required. I mean, you can go to state regulations and see where you're required to have a landscape architect do the design work, and so that's more cut and dry than putting the pressure on you to make that decision. And if you make the wrong decision, I mean, somebody could be well qualified, but they're not licensed as a landscape architect, so that could get kind of messy.
Have you had anyone approach you for this, Tina, within the past, 3, 4, 5 years or whatever it is?
Just one.
So that landscape.
And the scale, because the code only requires it for 5,000 or greater, which is a large scale development.
Building.
Yeah, that's the building square footage, not the lot square footage. The plans that they had drawn up were all small scale,
Yeah.
small projects, 1,000 square foot building, 800 square foot building. So I said, well, it's not of that same scale with that level of depth to it. And so I didn't accept them.
And I
Um,
would, I think I know what Andy's speaking about. Obviously, I'm biased, but I would concur with Andy is in removing the need for Tina to judge that kind of thing, just because it doesn't necessarily come up very often.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. It was the planning commission that wanted that.
5,000 and higher.
I'm good with that as well.
No, the option for someone other
Yeah,
than,
yeah,
Let's take that
but if it's
option.
Yeah.
it's still like 5,000.
Just make it
Yeah,
landscape
it's
architect.
right.
So if I'm a,
It puts you in
All our
conflict
business.
with the state regulations, the way I look at it.
Yeah,
As much as I like to do landscape architecture, it puts you it puts you in conflict.
And sometimes we all focus on the things that we like to do. We get to
Yep.
focus on what we like to do the most.
Yep.
Hopefully you
Well-
like buildings more than landscape. Otherwise, Andy, I'm looking for
was-
someone if you want to join.
I was in college, Peter, we were trained to do everything from the street on into the building.
Yep.
Including the landscaping, including the siding of the building, laying out parking lots, all that stuff. We were trained to do that, so, yeah.
things have changed.
And then Andy, I think you were going through a couple higher level comments or otherwise. Did anyone else have any other or Andy
No,
comments or otherwise?
those are my two that I just kind of spotted. I think I like the idea of either having a brochure that is easily that's available online along with the Title 16 requirements if people want to download them to let them know what they need to do to comply with the landscaping
Brochure.
ordinances. Yeah.
Check it off
And-
and then
and-
what references.
Mhm.
And this would be, I would defer to Tina as well, is that within code there are certain things that feel weird in code, especially when you start to get too informal or explaining a process. But I think
Right.
it's fair enough to say at the beginning of that landscaping section to say this is the basics of what you have to do and what is covered by this code.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because it does, the guarantee always seems to get lost. Everybody seems to be like, wait, what? I need a what? Then the next question is, I don't know how to get one.
Yeah,
I'm
where
like,
do you
don't
get
talk to
those?
me. I want, don't, just go figure it out.
as far as I know, I don't know if it was just who I was talking to or not, but there was somebody that said there's only one place out here to be able to get a landscaping bond. Is that right? Is it?
Wait,
I only found one.
Yeah.
okay, but you can do a letter of credit or you can do.
Yeah, I'm touching that.
Okay, all right, but the bond, I've seen, no, that's not true. There's only one. Because I've had them
Seen
from
more
at
than
least 5 different
Yeah, okay.
insurance companies that come
That's good.
through.
When I looked, I only found one that would touch it.
Yeah.
And-
Now, maybe it's one of these insurance companies that have multiple companies under them, you know what I mean? So it may be one broker or
Yeah, I
whatever you
found
call them.
one broker that was doing it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't terrible.
And I think there's one other thing I would point out, and Tim, this would be another question for you to look at plans, is from a rock mulch perspective. What I did was, where did I have that? I think it might have been in definitions. I think within rock mulch, what I said that a site shall, all miscellaneous landscaping within a site shall be covered by, turf, ground cover, or mulch. If rock mulch is used, it may be no more than 30% of the total miscellaneous landscape area. I kind of made up 30%. It felt okay. So then Tim might just be something where you, ping Una to see what she thinks about that, or to look at plans, just to see if that, because that then stops the chance that someone just might cover their entire site with rock.
Right.
It's landscape rock. No, that's D1.
Well, if it's in the landscape, it's
That's
rock.
landscaping, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's here. No, I haven't found it yet.
I'll take a look at this stuff.
So I think the main missing items, unless I forgot anything, Tina, it was just checking in about rock mulch and how we limit rock mulch extents. It was discussion of the fencing as being an option to replace for boulders. It was identified that we've quantified some things, but it's really and I pointed Tim again, these quantifications, see if they're kind of consistent with what you felt has been successful.
Yeah.
And then other than that, if people are reviewing these, where I have my initials are places where I didn't think it was cut and dried, where there might be an opinion in it. If someone has an opinion, it might just be to email Tina and say, hey, this note, here's my thoughts, and maybe Tina can consolidate where we do have missing opinions. And if there's no opinion in a particular section, my comment goes away, or Tina, you validate that something is what it is. And then again, within all of this is the closer view of Tina or staff to make sure there's minimizing unintentional consequences. I'm taking no responsibility for any of this. If anyone
Oh,
points
yeah.
and if anyone points and says, "Oh, this is so messed up," and it's Peter's fault.
It is Peter's fault.
Well, within this group, we can say that perhaps, but don't spread the word.
Yeah, take your name out before it goes to the press.
Yeah, no, the good thing is if there's some unintended consequences, even if it's not ideal, but let's say for some reason it slides through the planning commission, and it comes up as it's being advertised for the city council, it can always be, staff can call that out and say, oh, here's something, an inconsistency that wasn't caught by staff.
And ask.
We're proposing that it be included.
And then I think the only other specific subtleties in this were based on the last conversation. This is another one I just remembered, sorry. Parking lot perimeter landscape is shown as being 10 feet wide to allow the 2-foot extra space for snow storage. And what it says is shrubs will not be located closer than 4 feet to the back of curb. But if someone puts in a site obscuring feature or grade works to their benefit, they can reduce it by 2 feet and reduce the number of shrubs, because the shrubs and the distance aren't being used to help with headlights or for the snow storage. No, for the snow storage, but they're not being used to create an obstruction. So that's one thing in there that was gave people a 2-foot benefit if they're already on a site where they're below the road.
Yeah. Cruising. Go from along the road to above the road real fast.
I think the only thing that I haven't heard really vetted out, and maybe I'm just missing it, is outdoor storage in industrial zoning. There hasn't been a lot of talk about reworking that. They still have some standards in there. And you don't necessarily have to do it tonight, but if people look at that, I can always incorporate everybody's individual comments for the April 3rd meeting. And then it could be just a quick discussion of, yep, no, I don't like this one. I like that one, but I don't like this one.
How often is it a problem?
Well, we only have, it's those lots on Mystery. And then we have the ones that it's Shaylin, that's that interior. It's more the interior. Do they even need any perimeter landscaping? Do they need any screening? And then the ones that are on the corner of like Mystery and Lucas, no, not screening for that. Sorry, wrong word. Perimeter.
Yeah.
Along the road.
Okay.
It's a dead end cul-de-sac for an industrial park. Do they even need any requirements other than maybe street trees?
Yeah.
Something like that, just, from that standpoint. And then for the ones that are on those corners, because we just had a change in use, Mystery and Lucas, they're not screening their outdoor storage at all because there's really not a requirement to. Is that more important than landscaping, or do they need some kind of perimeter landscaping like along Lucas and or Mystery plus the screening of the outdoor storage? Because some of those start getting junky over time. Think of the insurance auto auction with all their cars. That's another industrial use along Mystery, which is a minor collector, running through the city. What kind of visual screening is appropriate for that?
What points
So-
you call that?
Within the code in general, I think we had said, so there's a use specific thing for storage, official storage yards, right? That's in a different section, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
But it doesn't have any landscaping tied to it. That's just the district use chart tells you where it can go, but then there's no screening and buffering.
okay. Because either I think that what you're saying would live in the buffer table.
Yeah,
So
it
then-
would be your table 4. So there's
Okay.
those 2 slots that need to just be thought about a little bit more. If everybody look at those.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we spent a lot of time talking about them.
And to be specific with what you're saying, right now, let's say the outdoor storage and industrial, there are 3 items for it: abutting a commercial zoning district, abutting a residential zoning, and across the right of way from residential. Really, what you're saying is between a certain type of industrial display and a right of way. So this
Yes.
might just be missing that line of if these occur adjacent to a right of way. You know,
Yes.
what does the community want? And if there are certain uses that happen in a very discrete area, you can provide street-based or area-based exemptions or requirements.
Mhm.
Like in Anchorage, there's a certain road type which triggers a higher level of landscaping. So on the new Seward and the old Seward, when they're further away from town, they trigger deeper and more intensive landscaping in order to maintain an Alaskan character. So there might be areas where you want to reduce industrial requirements because it's truly an industrial area, or have something that just says they provide one street tree, or they provide one tree every 30 feet without shrubs.
Yeah, so the code in 1633-060, subpart A gets into 3B and then it goes drills down from there. There's 2 sections: industrial zone lots with frontage on streets classified as local streets, and it tells you what has to be in that perimeter bed. And then industrial zone lots with frontage on streets classified as city as commercial, collector, arterial, or interstate, and here's what they have to be. But they still have trees, shrubs, mulch, and the other one I think has some requirements for flowering shrubs, things like that. That's what I'm saying. It may not be the right mix there. So within that section of the code, it may be incorporated in one of your table 3 or 2. Because this is a hybrid of like an L1 or an L2 or something.
Yeah, and if we missed any, if it looks like something is missing from the table, that was probably an undesirable omission. So if we missed anything, it might need to be put back in.
I think that's the only thing that might be missing. I'm not going to say it is missing, but I know there wasn't a lot of talking about it. So I think that's a quick homework item that people could look at based on all the other feedback for commercial.
Yep.
Just think of that screening of the outdoor storage. I have a couple that are being built now and they're saying, well, why do I have to do all this landscaping on the backside? Nobody can even see it from mystery. And I'm like, yeah, no, I agree with you, but right now the code says you have to.
Okay.
Or you do a variance or a waiver. I think that's the way they're gonna fix it, is go for the waiver. But it'd be ideal to just have it in the code. So I think that was the only thing that really tracked through that didn't really get maybe vetted out. And like I said, it may be just I didn't take good notes.
And then for Tina, for any notes that I made this evening, I made them in my documents. Should I just send you a new copy of those? Or
Yeah,
have you
that'd be great. Yep.
Okay.
If you want to make them another color, that'd be helpful. But you don't have
It,
to.
it might have been too late. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No worries.
And again, I really sincerely apologize for my delay. Clients sometimes, get in the way of things.
You gotta earn a living, what?
You're not gonna give up your paid job to do your unpaid job?
Okay. Have we done enough?
So,
Everybody happy-ish?
Happy
Okay.
Monday.
Monday. So it's been Monday. All right, well, it's 7:30. Any objections to exiting committee of the whole? Hearing none, we're now out of the committee of the whole. On to public comments. That was great. Staff and committee comments.
I'd just like to say thanks in front of the group that's here for all the work that Peter did compiling this together
Yes,
in those
Peter.
tables.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I was dreading having to do that. And so when he said, I've got all this stuff, I'm like, oh, thank you. I love you. That's amazing. So it gives me a great starting point. Like I said, my goal is to get you guys to do that final organization and compilation and get it out to you by the
This is
17th.
Pretty good already.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So just any final tweaks and making
Yeah.
sure nothing got left out. And
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, if I ever need a job reference, I'll have to, for code
That's
stuff,
right.
I'll list you
I'll
guys.
give you one. I'll give you one. If you want to be a planner someday, I will definitely recommend you.
Okay. Any other staff?
I don't
comments?
recommend it, but I'll recommend you.
Staff or committee comments? Hearing no more comments, we're adjourned.
Thank you all. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you again.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
night. Thank you.